Well, it's just smoke and mirrors.
The honourable member for Edmonton Northwest.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to mention I'll be sharing my time with my friend from Richmond, Arthabasca, as well. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to speak on C4. Although this bill is inspired by the Conservative platform and promises, C4's collection of half measures does not deal with the real drivers of the affordability crisis: large deficits, high spending, heavy taxation, and regulation. We acknowledge the Liberals for admitting that certain measures are needed after 10 years of Liberal economic mismanagement, which have caused high inflation, doubled housing costs, food prices, and on top of the pandemic pressures, have made life unaffordable for everyday Canadians. No matter how you slice it, C4's impact is too small compared to the previous tax increases, carbon pricing, and more failed Liberal economic policies. When I think about affordability, I think about the residents of Edmonton Northwest who have been hit hardest by Liberal policies that are out of touch with everyday Canadians. For seniors on fixed incomes who are among the hardest hit by rising grocery, energy, and housing costs, C4 does not provide the targeted relief. Seniors are worried about being able to stay in their long-term care facilities, in their own homes, or even to afford to be active in the community, such as the West End Senior Centre. They also say that this government is out to lunch, I also think about the many others who are left out of C4. Low-income, working-age adults who do not earn enough to pay income tax, people who pay large shares of their income on rent, people not old enough for OAS, food-insecure households who need more than hampers, women-led households with multiple children, uncompensated caregivers, people new to Edmonton Northwest, and the list goes on. Food Banks Canada reports that food bank visits doubled since 2019 to about 2.2 million in March 2025. These are everyday middle-class Canadians who are now relying on food banks. 1 in 5 clients is employed, and 1 in 3 are children, with 70% living in market rent housing. The Liberal government's school lunch program ignores 2/3 of individuals who rely on food banks who are not children. In their recent report, Food Banks Canada says the program, quote, does not directly address the structural causes of food insecurity. They also say that this government is out to lunch. They also quote that the Carney government says its November budget empowers and invests in Canadians, but lacks meaningful measures to reduce food insecurity, an important indicator of economic well-being and a strong predictor of poor physical health. It is therefore out of touch with the financial struggles that face millions of Canadians, end quote. 83% of food banks say more affordable housing is the single most important policy intervention, up from 61% in 2019. Low-income households are now spending about 66% of disposable income on shelter. But instead of flowing funds to the many urban and Indigenous organizations who have plans and shovels ready to address housing, this government wants to put more money to grow Ottawa bureaucracy that it has promised to cut. Existing renters, especially in big cities, see little in C4 that addresses their rent increases this year. This is yet another example of elite banker policies that are disconnected from the realities faced by everyday Canadians. Supply-side housing measures such as Build Canada Homes, the GST rebate on new rental housing will take years to see more new homes built. They also don't compare to the stated need for 500,000 homes per year and don't immediately lower rents for current tenants. In Edmonton Northwest, these measures structurally leave out a growing group of residents who can only afford to rent. Record rents and huge mortgages benefit banks and institutional investors, property management companies, and other friends of the Prime Minister. But the government has no serious plans to help young people who struggle to build their lives or to restore affordability. While young people are looking to move into affordable starter homes, house-rich but cash-poor seniors are paying ever-increasing property taxes on homes they can't afford to live in or sell. Announcing the concept of a plan for housing at Build Canada Homes without money and programs on the ground only delays investments that could be made today for the hope that government will subsidize some of the costs. This is just another example in the government's suite of affordability failures and half measures. We have heard from stakeholders that the dental care plan requires significant new red tape on the part of dental professionals who are already in short supply. Being modeled on the non-insured health benefits program for Indigenous peoples means that this dental care program will stronger favor the minority of Canadians who are lucky enough to have practitioners who will spend hours or sometimes days on the phone with the insurer to advocate persistently for the basic of medically necessary treatments for their patients. On the other hand, this will give Canadians a taste of the disastrous bureaucratic inequities that many Indigenous people face daily. We have heard directly from persons with disabilities that the Canadian Disability Benefit and the entire system for enrolling into federal programs is a nightmare for taxpayers and practitioners. This government-built massive paperwork and inconsistent bureaucracies where somehow we put CRA instead of medical professionals in charge of determining who does or does not have a disability. The Auditor General found that CRA was unreliable even for tax information. Why would vulnerable Canadians trust CRA on medical matters? Now to a few positives of C4. C4 finally repeals the consumer-facing carbon tax after nearly a decade of stumbling around. I'm glad the government has finally listened to and admitted their cornerstone climate policy failed. But that hasn't changed its overall spending and regulatory approach. They had the power to fix the carbon tax without a bill years ago, but waited to maximize political benefit over the needs of Canadians. Household goods and services that have the industrial carbon tax baked in and are not suddenly going to be less expensive. Many car-dependent workers and families of Edmonton Northwest will certainly benefit. Tradespeople, delivery drivers, warehouse and logistical workers, healthcare staff, and other commuting by car from Northwest into other parts of the city will feel the immediate gain from lower fuel charges at the pumps brought on by the lobbying effort of the Conservative Party. But that leaves out the lowest income Albertans who can't afford to drive or have no jobs to drive to. Those are some of the people who the Liberals exploited to champion the carbon tax years ago with the promise of rebates. This new automatic tax filing program will probably increase take-up of benefits, which matters a lot for very low-income households who currently don't file. We heard from students studying in health fields that couch surfing without a permanent address to file taxes remains a top concern, just as it would be for some folks who gain the most from access to benefits. Going forward, how can Canadians trust the same Liberal government who saddled current and future generations for the last decade to fix what they've broken? The Prime Minister promised to get tariffs fixed in July. Now they're promising to make life more affordable. This is another promise that Liberals are poised to break. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.